Hi, hello, my name is Gabrielle, and today we're talking about Heartstopper, but before we start, just be mindful that Heartstopper goes a little bit deeper into books about mental illnesses, bullying, eating disorders, and self-harms, and although they're not going to be discussed at great lengths here, they're going to be referenced throughout the video, so just be mindful of that. Hi, as I said, we're talking about a Heartstopper today. My relationship with Heartstopper was really weird in a way that I have known of its existence for like so long, but I've never really thought anything about it really. I don't know, I'm not a big fan of visual novels in general because they're expensive and I read really fast. I have issues. But when it came out on Netflix, I decided to give it a go, and I fell in love, and that's what we're talking about today. Before we start, I have a script. I read fast. I'm sorry if it goes too intense. I'm trying to limit myself. Let's start. So, Heartstopper is the story of Charlie Spring, a 14-year-old anxiety-ridden introverted gay nerd, and his meeting with golden retriever golden-hearted rugby lad Nick Nelson in their all-boys school in England. From this alone, you might think, well, that's a little bit like a fantasy setting for a lot of gay people, and you wouldn't be that wrong, but hear me out. This is one of the most important pieces of young queer media I've seen in a fucking long time. Their meeting and their subsequent relationship, friendship turned love story, is told through vivid visual storytelling mediums with a magnificent sense of art direction both in the show and in the book. Their love story is intertwined with their friendships with Tara and Darcy, a lesbian couple from the all-girls school, Elle, a trans student who happens to be bestie with Charlie, who moved to the all-girls school that year as part of her transition, her relationship with Tao, an overly emotional, cynical, token straight bestie of Charlie. The story of the series is separated into 8 episodes, 8 arcs that are incredibly well structured. This show is like candy for real. It's like a big blanket of love and fizziness, whilst unwilling to shy away from the very important and darker aspect of queerness. For example, one part that I specifically loved was how they portrayed realistic, casual, and more insidious homophobia without making it the entire struggle of the show. Queer people grow up having to constantly deal with homophobia and bigotry constantly, so much so that at one point it becomes a little dull, and I thought that this show portrays it really, really well. How, like, specifically how Charlie reacts to it as if it's not a big deal, but we see his mental health decline throughout the show because of it. All around, Alice Oseman's universe in the show gets the way growing up queer influences the rest of your existence. But a queer identity doesn't make you not have regular teenage emotions, banters, and problems. It is just dealt with differently. The coming out over and over again, feeling like you can exactly show who you are, feeling like you're missing out on what every straight kid gets, whilst also feeling like your bonds with queer people are that much stronger and real. This show is realistic in its depiction of queer teenagehood and avoids the over-sexualization of queer identity all around, since it doesn't show these kids get sexual, and it's such a breath of fresh air. Not that sex isn't part of being queer. Like, for a lot of queer people, it is. But it avoids the stereotype because they're teenagers, and we don't need to see teenagers have sex on screen to understand that they're in love, because there is more to homosexuality and being gay than sex. All around, Heartstopper is a warm embrace of a story. I really like the show. I watch it so often at this point that it became a joke with my friends. Whenever I felt bad in the past month, I would be like, well, gotta go watch Heartstopper, and they'd be like, Gab, don't. And I'd be like, Gab, yes. But the comic is also rich and powerful and all around perfect, and I really, really love it, and I really, really compel you to go watch it. So now let's go a little bit more into spoilers. Okay, so I watched the show like 5 times at this point and read the comic twice now. I have also read both novellas, so Nick and Charlie and This Winter. I have not read Solitaire yet, but I have bought it. It's just not available in Canada yet. Charlie and Nick's meet-up is so genuinely adorable, but also important. Nick particularly is such an important and great character. Also, I'm so sorry, I will say the word important so many times in this script. I apologize in advance. But I can't remember in my memory any piece of media depicting a bi character so well, specifically a bi man character so well and so unambiguously positively, particularly one which had discovered their sexuality in the forefront of the story. A lot of times I feel like bi characters are already out and proud, which is totally fine, but having one explore how hard it is to discover your sexuality when it's not black and white, basically, is so important. Nick Nelson's character never bleeds into any of the negative perception of bi people either, which is so fucking important both for straight and queer people. The way he describes his attraction and the way Charlie and everyone Charlie reacts to it positively, or at the very least supportingly, is so really good. He could be in love with anyone. It just so happens that he fell in love with a gay nerd that looks like Zooey Deschanel. The coming out scene with his mom was also very sweet in both depictions, having a mom just genuinely happy for him, and somewhat sad she felt like she might have scared him to come out, and she was apologetic about it, was incredibly reassuring and important. In the same vein, it is so cool to have a character like Nick Nelson, openly bisexual and in a relationship with another man who doesn't appear to be queer at first glance. There's a point of contention in the show that no one believes or think that Nick could ever be queer because of the way he looks. Al, Tao, and even Charlie are like, ooh, he's too straight looking to ever fall in love with Charlie, which bleeds into people's perception of Kit Connor, the actor, and which is so fucking weird. Don't speculate publicly about actors' sexualities, it's so fucked up. But it is something that was definitely needed, specifically on such a big scene as Netflix. On that same note, Kit Connor, the actor who plays Nick, did such a fucking fantastic job at the facial expression of Nick in the first half of the show particularly. The confusion in his face the whole time is wondering why he has so much fun with Charlie, and whether it was normal. It was really perfect. On the other hand, and something more personal to me, I guess, was definitely Charlie Sprang. If I'm completely honest, on the first watch, I wasn't particularly fond of Charlie. He was cute and interesting, but not more than that, he was just like normal. But after that, I realized that a lot of it stemmed from the fact that I recognize myself a lot through Charlie, at least on the surface. His self-sabotage specifically hit really hard for me. The way Charlie constantly feels like he's an annoyance, too much, and not great in general, really hit home. I could sense it from the beginning, even before Tao verbalized that in episode 8, which is the moment I've cried the most at in the show, by the way. His constant doubt in himself was, as much as it hurt me to see it on screen and realizing how much I relate, in a way, very truthful and something not explored that well in most media, even media that say they focus on like mental health. They don't seem to talk about this side of things, which is it's really cool that they went there. Of course, it also hit super hard to see Nick, particularly in the comics, trying so hard to help him get more assurance in himself and care so deeply for Charlie, and then even trying to fix him with love, which is so adorable yet so sad. Anyway. Charlie's arc made me cry multiple times, specifically the Paris trip and the fallout in volume 3 and 4 were so sad. Charlie's genuine gentleness, sweetness was really great as well, and it hurt that much deeper. Knowing that even after all that homophobia, that bullying, it couldn't change him to be like better was like, I guess it's part of the self-sabotage as well, but it was really cute. Although I have to say, one of the pickles I have to pick with Charlie in the show is that he is a lot less bitter and snarky as in the comics, which I think is one of my favorite part of Charlie in the comics, is how snarky he is. It's like fun. One example is that in the show, when Nick and Harry fight, Charlie turns off and blames himself and is like, oh my god, don't do that. Whereas in the comics, he feels bad and is sad that Nick is hurt, but he's still happy that Harry got a beating. It's a slight difference, but I really liked how bitter, like how snarky and just like funny Charlie is in the comics, and I hope they bring that more into the second season. Also, the way season 1 dealt with Charlie's eating disorder was really interesting in the way that I never noticed it on first watching, and then when I rewatched it and every subsequent time I watched it, you notice so much his relationship with food, and like it is subtle but it is there, and I think it is so it's so sad but it's so powerful to see how insidious it can be, and I thought it was portrayed super well. So all in all, their relationship was explored so fucking well. Nick's research for his identity, his fear of coming out, being outed, being ostracized, and Charlie's patience and willingness to help him figure things out was so sweet. Although Nick's secrets do hurt Charlie, and Nick is self-aware enough to care about him and do the steps necessary to make their relationship feel right for the both of them. It was not only interesting once again, but it was so fucking important. I like how Nick's unreadiness to come out was not seen as good or bad, but just as a fact. That's what contrasted him so much with Ben. Ben's unwillingness to come out was weaponized against Charlie, whereas Nick's was just a fact. They were in the same boat, except that Ben was so fucking scared that he refused to interact with Charlie in any way, whereas Nick just was not ready to go further, but was ready to still be besties and cuddle and be platonic at school, although they were more than that. And realistically, I can hardly really hate Ben. Like, that's... Like, I can because he did assault Charlie and he's a piece of shit and we hate Ben in this house. Ben is a bad person. He needs to work on himself so bad. But I understand what the fuck is wrong with him and I understand where it stems from, and I think it's a very interesting character to bring out. Let's move on from Nick and Charlie for a little bit. I think that Tara and Darcy were as much, if not more important than Nick and Charlie throughout this show. Rarely ever do we see such genuine, positive lesbian relationships on screen, and their relationship, once again, goes against all the harmful stereotype and bullshit that lesbians have to go through trying to get an ounce of representation. The simple fact that they audibly call themselves lesbians, and that Tara even talks briefly about how it feels weird at times to call herself a lesbian, was so special. How, like, she can hardly say the word lesbian, which is a sentiment that I've heard from a lot of my lesbian friends, while it's never really being seen on screen. Having Tara and Darcy, just two best friend turned lovers, was so cute and important. And once again, this is where the non-sexualized aspect of it is so great. When do we see lesbian characters on screen that are not made for the male audience? Never. This was so great because they were just girlfriends and they were just besties turned girlfriends, and I loved it so much. Darcy particularly felt really good to me, like, because she exemplified the chaotic way some queer people turn after coming out as queer, just by the fact that people are already judging them for being queer, so why would they try to hide whatever else is going on? I thought it was really strong. It's also something super interesting about the show, how none of these queer peoples are one-sided or fit in like the queer people box, if that makes sense. They're all differently portrayed as completely different, and it's really refreshing because queer people are not all the same, contrarily to what some people might think. Tao is a character that got the least amount of fans from the show, and although I understand why, I still really like him from the show. I think a character like him, super protective and nice and straight, that would do anything to protect Charlie, whilst himself being super anxious and scared and apprehensive, was great and fresh and very relatable. A lot of his plot points were relatable, to me at least. The, like, genuinely be scared that people are gonna leave you after being in a relationship, even if it's another friendship, it's really relatable. I really like Tao. On the other hand, Xiao Tao was portrayed a lot more on edge than Book Tao, which I understand why. Like, it is to add more tension to the show, but both of them were really great, and I really love Tao. Elle was a fucking delight. I love Yasmin Finney. She did such a great job, and I really like her arc, how normal it was. It's just a girl in love with her best friend, trying to absorb the changes in her life, whilst being super nice and a little mysterious, because that's just what teenagers are. I hope the Paris strip focuses more on these two next season, because once again, having such a normal through line for a trans girl is something I really enjoyed, and seeing how Tao was like straight bestie in love with his friend, and not, she's trans, and I don't know, it was really sweet. Finally, let's discuss the art direction, because I'm a little cinematography snob. Starting with the book, I personally am not the biggest fan of webcomic, as I said earlier. I think it leaves a lot of blank space that most of the time is poorly used, and I don't know, I just don't read enough to love it, I guess. But this book feels super different. Alice Oseman's sketchier style lets them put more emphasis on the emotion and the visceral feeling of the story, and she uses the page setup so creatively, either by the panels being waved off, exploding in flowers, or most commonly leaves, or disappearing slowly when Charlie dreads the worst. She was really intelligent, and they used the medium to enhance the story, and it was really great. As for the show, it was fucking beautiful. The show was great. I really like the color, how everything was like really saturated. I have a very like I really like color correction, so every time a color correction makes things saturated, it makes me go happy. I really like it, and it was really well done, and I can't complain. My favorite episode was definitely episode 3 because of all the bisexual lighting. Every time Nick is under bisexual lighting, I just go yes King. And also the kiss during the song Clear as Blue and the sparks was really nice. The animation throughout the leaves and the hearts and the when they touch hands and there's a little spark, it's really cute, it's really nice. I really love it. I really like all the details that went to the uniform as well, like that one shot where Charlie is daydreaming about Nick coming out as gay, and then he has little hearts on his True uniform, and then the uniform patch change every season. It's just really cute. It's a very nice detail. And another thing about the art direction in the show is the music. The music fucking slaps. I don't know who designed the soundtrack for Heartstopper, but they deserve a kiss on the forehead. It is so good. The mixtape on Netflix, like the Netflix mixtape on Spotify, is immaculate. It is perfect. I love it. I love it so much. The music is so great. Sorry, I just had to say it. But yeah, as for the storyline of the show, I didn't really talk about the storyline of the show somehow, but the storyline was really good. I really like what they added and changed. So I really liked Imogen. I thought she added that little bite that like the book didn't give for that one arc. So I really liked her inclusion. I really liked the sports day event where they all apologized and kissed in the school, and it added more. So I thought that they really like adapted the book in a faithful way while also adding a lot more to it, which made it better. So yeah, I really, really fucking love the Heartstopper. It is so fucking good. I can't wait for season 2 and 3. I can't wait to cry. Now let's move on to the montage. And for this time I'm trying something new, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my process for this image. This is a redrawing of my favorite panel from the show, this one right here, made by Alice Oseman. And I hope we can see that I was trying to portray Kit Connor and Joe Locke through it. That was the goal. And then I really, really like how it turned out super cozy, super like warm. It's not a color palette I go in super, super often, but I really, really like it. And also a little scoop, here is the first like mood board, like mood drawing that I had for it that I was trying to figure out before I actually did the coloring this time. So thanks a lot for coming around. It was I love Heartstopper. I wanted to talk about Heartstopper for so long. Nobody I know really watched Heartstopper, and I don't want to annoy the people who did. So, I'm using this to talk about it freely and for fun. It's also accidental, but my next short positive review is also about a queer love story, which I thought I didn't like romance. I was wrong, I guess. 3 in a row now. Thanks a lot for coming around. It was such a pleasure to have you. All the social medias on the screen are going to be linked in the description. And thanks a lot and see you soon.